What is up, everybody, and welcome to the Clackbox. I'm your host here, Cody Clackler. And hey, if you were listening, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate all of that. And if you are listening on iTunes, do me a favor, leave a like, 5 stars, and a review and a comment. That really, really helps us out. If you were listening in Sweden, hey, thank you for listening there. I've got a couple of listeners there. If you were listening in the United Kingdom, thank you so much. Have a curly whirly, which is my favorite candy of all time. Have one of those for me. I appreciate it if they still make them. But we are here. My good friend Nathanael is back with us from his trip. If you listened to episode 2, we talked about him going on this journey that God had for him on this mission trip. He is back. So everybody say hi, Nathanael. What's up, dude?
Howdy. Happy to be back.
How are you?
I've been good. You good? Finally recovered.
So you've been back for like 2 weeks now, right?
Two, almost 3, yeah.
Almost 3?
2-3 weeks, yeah.
No more jet lag?
No, it did take a while to get normal again.
So like total flight time, what did you have?
Just in the air, about 20 hours-ish. But as far as travel and layovers and all that, closer to 30, 36.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So you were gone for 10 days?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How long were you actually there?
I was there about 7.
And the rest was travel?
The rest, I spent a good 3 to 4 days just traveling. And it's hard because you go to, like, you miss a day and you gain a day, so, like, the math hurts my head a little bit. Like, wait, what day is this? Is this Inception? Like, what's going on?
It's from day.
Yeah. But, yeah, it was a lot of flying.
So were you just overwhelmed getting back?
Yeah. Like emotionally, spiritually, physically, just drained. And it took a week to 2 weeks to feel like myself again. Wow. I probably lost 10, 15 pounds in that short amount of time.
So it's a great weight loss program, is what you're saying?
Yeah. Forget any of those other Weight Watcher programs. Just go on a mission trip to where I went. You'll lose it quick.
So part of that, though, we talked about was because of the cuisine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the cuisine is good, but it's unique, and I'm not one to say no to food. And I'm also not super picky, and I also don't I don't want to be disrespectful. So if you put something in front of me, I'm going to eat all of it, and probably to my demise a little bit, because some of the things that are in their food, my stomach was not prepared for. So, yep.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I think we can all see where this is going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So we'll leave that. It wasn't because the amount of food you didn't eat.
No.
It was just the way that it affected you.
Yes. Yeah. It affected me. Mm-hmm.
Was there something that was surprisingly good that you didn't like? You ate and then you were like, "Oh, this is actually pretty good. I didn't think it'd be good."
There was a meatball soup, which in America, well, not really American, but there's a Mexican soup called abondigas. It's like a meatball, kind of vegetable, chunky soup. Okay. And it tasted like that, and I loved that. So that was really good. But when I saw it, I'm like, what meat is that?
It's like an episode of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, just kind of bobs to the top.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. So you go 10 days. You're on this adventure. Now, you called it a vision trip.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So now we're back.
Yeah.
Do you have an answer to that?
You know, when I went, I thought I was pretty sure that God was going to very explicitly tell me to stay there. Not stay there, like all right, babe. I'll see you later.
Can you pack yourself?
Yeah. No, but I felt like I would have this long-term call. And when I got back, and throughout the whole time there, I never got that expressive or explicit feel or this call. But what I got rather was kind of a heart for the people there, and kind of more of a vision for what the future holds as far as my role with being in America and then partnering with the people over there and leading teams there potentially. So it was different than I anticipated for sure.
What do you mean it was different than what you expected?
Like I expected I don't know, just more clarity, I think, was what I expected. And when I got back, it was more like, keep doing what you're doing.
Is that what you were praying for?
I think I was praying for very clear, like, go. I want you to, like, this is what, maybe 5 years from now, maybe like next year, but it'll be like, you're going to move there. I anticipated that, and then I never got it. I'm like, okay.
Was that a little unsatisfying?
It wasn't. I thought it would be. And I think a part of me was a little scared that it would be that answer. So when I didn't get that, it wasn't necessarily relief, but it was okay, God. Like, it was almost like continue to do what you're doing, which was nice to hear. Like you're on the right track. But you don't, I was expecting to have this huge faith racking, like, pack up and move, you're moving like next month type of thing. And so it was a little bit of relief, a little, like, honestly, I mean, the human side of me was like, okay, I don't have to like quit my job and like grace support within the next month type of thing.
I still get to shave.
yeah, exactly.
I don't have to eat locusts.
Yeah, no, oh gosh, locusts and honey, that's all we had.
Totally not true. So I struggle sometimes with a little bit of what I think you're alluding to. Is I'm really good at giving God the destination.
Yeah.
The journey is what I kind of like to control.
Yeah.
So when he puts something like that in front of you and he's like, nah, just stay on the journey. There's no destination yet.
Yeah.
Do you...
That's hard. And I've been saying this since kind of the beginning of this whole thing. God truly has been like a lamp into my feet, and that's it. Like, I see my feet, I see maybe a little bit of the next step, so I'll go through that step, but I can't see anything. And I kind of have this vague like idea of what's way, way ahead, but it's too blurry and like obscure for me and vague for me to really like.
Super hazy.
Yeah. So it's just, he's been a lamp like right in front of me. And I've been trying to just faithfully step through those little steps, but it is so, I think, frustrating to not be able to plan it, not be able to like, yeah, I know what the next 8 steps are of my life. And those are the things I'm going to do. It's like, all right, God, I went. What's next? Oh, right there. Okay. But, like, can you give me a couple more hints?
Well, and that's because that's part of where you're at is in this idea that, okay, that's done. This year-long journey is done. Boom.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what's next? I'm always like, what's next? What's next? And so I think I kind of have an idea of what's next.
Save that. We need to ask that later.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
Save that. Okay, so we talked before on the podcast about you were getting text messages of pictures of x-rays and of potential patients.
Yeah.
Then you go, and some of those pictures you sent, it wasn't very many that I saw, but I saw a few of them.
Yeah.
And terrible.
Yeah. Where I was, the medical profession, one of the foreign doctors that I had met said that this country is about 50 to 60 years behind medically where like modern medicine is. So where America would be, they're about 50 years behind. So there's no version of physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. There's no training for that. It doesn't exist in the entire country. And so you get a lot of kids.
Is that 50 years behind on the treatment side or the education side?
I would...
Do you see what I'm asking?
Yeah, maybe both, to be honest. So they have a medical school. But one of the folks that I was talking to, they kind of change biology a little bit. So they want the men are the leader of the family, and they're the ones that are, held to high esteem, and the woman is not. And so if they can't have a son, they say it's the woman's fault. And in the medical school, they train that biologically it's the woman
that dictates that.
That dictates that.
But we know
biologically it's not true.
Right.
And so I'd say education-wise, it's probably pretty far behind. Now there are some good doctors. I met at least one that he's a good doctor, but for the most part.
But that's transplant. Is that a transplant per se? Is that someone who didn't grow up in the medically in that system?
No, he was a local.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah,
so he was a local, and he was a local Christian, so that was really cool.
Yeah.
And I think some of that, being a Christian, helped influence how good of a doctor he would be, because there wasn't corruption or greed necessarily as prevalent. So he was. There's a lot of corruption and greed within the medical profession over there. So I'll heal you, but this pill is going to cost you a lot of money. / this pill is probably not what you really need, but it costs a lot of money. So take this pill.
Really?
Yeah, especially with kids, babies. And I think I was seeing a lot of the repercussion of that with 3-4 years down the road of these kids being highly sedated and having neurological delays and things like that. And so I was dealing with the remnants of that. Like, okay, now that this is done, how do I get you stronger? How do I get you walking? How do I get you rolling? Just being able to crawl as a 3 or 4 year old. So it was.
Which that trickles down to, it's not just one thing when you're talking about that, right? It's it ends up being feeding yourself, which then equals malnutrition, which then equals muscle atrophy. I didn't think I said that word right, but like. So it's a whole gamut of things that are all tied together. I would not have thought about the corruption side.
Yeah, and that was shocking to me.
I mean, it's only in America, bro.
What was that?
It's only in America, right?
Yeah, the corruption side is fascinating. That blew my mind. I wasn't expecting that at all when I went there, and it's frustrating. But there's not a whole lot that, like the guy that I was with. He wanted to crusade for a while, and it frustrated him, and he would speak poorly of the doctors there to his patients, and just raised a bunch of heck, I guess you could say, and
kicked up a bunch of dirt.
Yeah, and what he ended up kind of getting some backlash from that, and being a foreigner, he didn't want to cause too much trouble. Because that could affect all the things that he was doing outside of just treating. So he had to kind of tone it back. And so recently he's kind of been like, I mean, I'm going to educate when I can. I'm going to be loving and do what I can, but there's only so much corruption that I can help fight.
So one of the things that you brought up before was working with pediatrics, working with kids. So you get over there working with kids. I see some of these pictures and x-rays. I can say that because there's not HIPAA laws, right?
And some of their names are hard to pronounce anyway.
You're not breaking HIPAA law by showing me a picture. That's funny that I thought of that right then. But what was give me if you can the hardest thing that you saw?
Ooh.
Or was it over just a collection of overwhelming? Was there a point of you breaking, like you went back to where you were staying and just went?
Yeah, there was one girl, and you saw the X-ray for this. I don't know if she was the hardest because she was 17. She had really bad scoliosis, and we think scoliosis here. We get checked, in school, grade school, and they're very proactive about, all right, put a brace on, do these exercises, etc. Well, she didn't really have that, and it was the worst back that I had ever seen. And at 17, it hurt to breathe for her. It hurt to be in certain positions.
Really?
And she was so collapsed down and kind of crunched up that I knew that there was nothing that I could do to like improve, but there was something I could do to stop it from getting worse, because it was getting worse by the day.
By the day?
I mean, I saw the X-ray from 5 years ago, and it was bad, but it wasn't horrible. And then I saw the X-ray from 3 years ago, and that was the latest X-ray they had, and it had gotten like 20 degrees worse, so collapsed down 20 more degrees, and that was 3 years ago. And that X-ray was already like, oh my gosh, how is she surviving?
Yeah, because what I saw, and then we didn't talk about it, but what I saw was you start getting into the question of like, how are your organs operating?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's where she's probably only functioning on one lung, because she just doesn't have the space for it. I mean, she looks like she's collapsing down on herself. And so what I ended up diagnosing, I mean, with it, it's hard. Patients come in and you have an X amount of minutes to like evaluate, assess, diagnose, treat, and then educate. And then the next patient comes in. So luckily with her, I had a little more time. But there's this abnormality where your ligaments become too stretchy. And so with her, like guys that are like double jointed or they like dislocate their shoulder a lot,
yeah,
that's like an actual like abnormality where your ligaments are actually too lax. So your muscles need to be trained to stabilize those joints. Well, with her, I think that's what was happening, because her elbows would hyperextend just sitting there. And she'd just sit with her elbow like hyperextending, and her knees were collapsing in when she walked, and her feet. So as I'm watching her, I'm like, I think that's what the deal is. So what her normal day is sitting on the ground, which is culturally what they do, and watching soap operas. And she would just kind of slump into that position worse and worse each day. So her ligaments were too stretchy, so they would just essentially just collapse more and more and more. And so she was, for sure, for me, one of the hardest, because she's 17. She feels a lot of shame. She feels a lot of pressure, because I think she's felt like a burden for so long, because she knows she's not going to more than likely get married. She's not able to help out around the house a whole lot, or doesn't want to. And
who's going to take care of her when she gets older?
Yeah, and so I kind of had to speak some truth into her life a little bit, because I think she's become kind of almost apathetic towards her condition. And she's like, you know what? This is just my life. I'm going to sit there, I'm going to watch TV, and that's just the way it's going to be. And so I had to kind of say, through a translator, if you don't improve, like, do you want to breathe? Do you want to be able to function? Because it's going to get worse if you don't do these things. If you don't change your lifestyle, then it's going to get worse and worse and worse.
So one of the things with this, and I run into this, ministry, you get the ability to kind of, you end up playing this parental, friend, uncle, mentor role all collapsed into one.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So me, last Wednesday night, having a conversation with a couple of students, it ends in prayer, hugs. But so I think about me in that situation, and I'm sitting there going, how do you not go relational?
Yeah. I think some of that is having worked in the medical field for a while now, I can separate a little bit, but I don't want to. I want to be relational. I think that's why I love my job, is because I can be relational. But then, especially there's a lot of respect with what I do, and so I'm in a place of authority, so I can speak truth kind of, not harshly, but very like, this needs to be done, but then at the same time be joking and loving and like try and build rapport with the patient.
So like with her, that tragedy is the word.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you just... Yeah, I'm thinking me being face to face with that patient. We'll call it a patient, that girl.
Yeah.
I'm just like, and maybe this is the goofy side of me, but I'm just kind of like, I just want to hug all of you. I just want to carry you. I want to take you home. I want to,
Yeah.
I want to. So did you have any moments, even back where you were staying, where you were questioning God? Like, why is this going on? Why, for the specific person or in general? Or like, did you struggle emotionally with what you were seeing?
Yeah, I think the thing that I struggled with the most was how much better care they would have had if they were like anywhere else. Just the lack of care, the lack of education, the lack of like resources, I think was the hardest thing, because I would see patients that I could see that if they were in America, they would not be where they're at.
They'd be fine.
Yeah, they would be fine. And so that was the hardest thing for me.
Well, and with this girl particularly, you're watching someone who, there would have been issues here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But diagnosed quickly, and in our system,
Yeah.
like the trajectory changes.
Yeah.
Physically. But I think what's hard for me thinking about this, and I'm going to just compartmentalize my emotions and ignore what I'm about to say.
Okay.
But is emotionally, mentally, spiritually, her trajectory would have changed. And so you're watching someone who, like you said, is just like checking off her life.
Yeah.
Based on a physical thing.
Yeah.
And as a physical therapist, are those two things, do they connect a lot with you, especially when you go somewhere like that? Like here, you're probably not too much connected to that. You can say, like, I'm treating you physically. Yes, you want to be loving and have great bedside manner and show the light of Jesus, but it's not like your emotional and mental well-being is directly connected to how bad you're doing physically.
Yeah, that hurt me for her, because you could tell that she was kind of checking out. And at 17, I mean, she didn't want to look in the mirror. She didn't want to she didn't want to help out around the house. I was like, you should. We were jokingly saying you should do some chores, which would just be good exercise to be able to get up and move around. And she's like, "Nah, I don't want to do chores. That's ridiculous."
It's a normal 17-year-old, though.
There were aspects. So like, it was hard because you would see these aspects of like a kid or just a teenager that just like, even the negative, like, I don't want to do chores, but it was like, hey, that's kind of fight is what like I want. That's like normal, quote unquote normal. But then she would go back to like eyes down, like I'm a burden. And I'm wondering how much she had to get on a bus and drive 2 hours to get from her village to where I was so that I could treat her for another 2.5 hours. And just, I wonder how much just feeling like, I'm sorry, Mom, I'm sorry, Grandma, like I know that this is another thing that you have to go take me to, and spend a whole day just going through the rain and the cold on a bus to get down here.
And that...
Yeah. It's seeing that, like, yeah, there was definitely some burden there, and you can see it on her eyes. And so I tried to make it light to where I could. I asked what her favorite soap operas were, and things like that. But it's hard, man. It was really hard to see that.
So, seeing all that, did you find your dialogue with God change a little bit, or was there dialogue with God? Like, how did that impact you and God? And I'm not trying to make it selfish. I'm just...
Yeah. I think, and I haven't really digested this completely, I don't think.
Okay.
But I think that there's an aspect to hope that comes when there is a church and there is this godly kind of influence. Where I was, there was just a lot of darkness.
Did you feel that?
Oh my gosh, I felt like it was weird. It was like a heaviness and an emptiness. It was like heavy dark. Does that make sense? It was almost like a void of spiritual like good, and then this heaviness of dark. And it was like this play of like feeling spiritually empty, but then like getting attacked and feeling like this just weight. It was I can't describe the dynamic spiritually because I never experienced it before. But where I was, there's so few Christians and so few churches that it was weird. It was like an emptiness and a heaviness. Like it was like a heavy empty, which doesn't make any sense. But that's the only way that I can really describe it. And so my dialogue with God was kind of, I just started to see this spiritual like battle where like this girl, like she was not only being oppressed physically, but she was being oppressed spiritually and emotionally, and it was all tied together. And just not having that hope, the hope that we have in Christ, you could see that like in her eyes, because a lot of people are really good at distracting themselves with other things, like, well, like I'm good at sports, or I'm getting married, or
Right.
She didn't have any of that. And then on top of that, she's not able to distract herself from her need for salvation, I think. And like I said, I haven't digested that completely, but
What was that last thing you just said?
so she wasn't able to distract herself from her need for salvation. It's like she knew that she needed hope. She knew, she was like acutely aware that like she was broken. And I think I don't want to downplay Americans or anyone else's testimony for sure.
Right.
But I could see on her like like she was living not only in that moment of brokenness, but she was living it out like, this is it. Like I sit in my house all day, physically broken, emotionally broken, and I'm not even able to distract myself with anything except soap operas. So there isn't even like fleeting moments of like, well, I'm happy now. Okay, I can go do this thing, and then it's just sitting there in brokenness. And that's not to downplay, like that happens all the time, everywhere,
Right.
to a lot of people. But seeing it like just on her face was hard.
Well, we have the luxury and the curse of. I don't even know if this is a term, so I'm going to make it up.
Okay.
Somebody really smart is going to change this for me, but like salvational distraction. So what I mean is we have the luxury and curse of other things that can save me.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm physically ailing, right, then I've got, well, at least I have this great home, or 750 channels and Netflix and this, and food is good and someone's going to take care of me, and it will eventually go away, and all those things. Or my job sucks, but at least all this is good, or whatever. There's all these things that rescue us.
Yes, yeah.
Where someone like that, or someone here, it doesn't change. When they don't have any of that, it is that term of being at the end of your rope. The only thing that can save you is eternal hope.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting what I was trying to say.
Sorry, didn't mean to.
No, I like that, because I was like, how do I clarify? Because I don't want to downplay anyone else's path or anyone else's journey or story, because there's for sure brokenness everywhere. But I was able to see it there, probably for the first time that acutely, that amount of brokenness and like spiritual, physical, emotional, on a 17-year-old.
Literally in every aspect. Kind of no light.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Man, did you see it in her eyes?
Yeah. When she did make eye contact, it was
hollow.
Yeah. Yeah, it looked like hopelessness. And she would listen. She would be respectful. She would like do what I asked her to do. But there was very much I guess I'll do it because you're telling me to, and I want to be respectful, and that's what I'm supposed to do. But I don't want to. I'm not going to later unless someone tells me to, because what's the point?
Were you thinking you would see that?
No. I was expecting to see some pretty bad cases, some pretty bad conditions, but yeah, not that type of hopelessness. And she was one of the only ones that I saw that had that. A lot of the other kids in the other places that I saw, you could see some despair on the parents' face. Mm-hmm. What can we do? Will they ever walk again? And asking questions that I really couldn't answer based on 30 minutes of seeing this kid. But on the kids' faces, most of them were younger. I think that they hadn't been living with whatever they had for 17 years. Most of them are younger, and so I'm just a kid, just doing my thing. But I did see that despair and hopelessness, not as much, but a little bit more on the adults, the parents.
The parents' side?
Yeah.
I can totally see that. Mm-hmm. So, with the community, we talked about, and you were doing we did a quick, so we're in Wise County, Texas, right? Yeah, and it's a lot of it is pretty much what you would think. If you're somewhere else in the world and you think Texas, yeah, it's pretty close to that. There's more horses than cars.
Yeah, Texas in your head is where we're at.
Yeah. For the most part. We have hipsters on horses.
It's true.
You're one of them, sir. No.
Yeah, true.
But we talked about, we just quickly, really fast, in 30 seconds, counted 21 churches in a 20-mile radius.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And we know we're missing some.
And we're not in a metroplex or a metropolitan
area. Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that right?
Yeah.
No.
Not anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. What is there, 80,000 people in our county?
Something like that.
Yeah. So, so that changes the dynamic, because you said where you were trying to do some quick stuff. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah. So, if I was talking to some of the folks I was with, and I asked how many churches are in the city. So I was in the biggest city in the country, which isn't huge, but it's the biggest city, and they said maybe 10. I was like, okay, that's not a lot by any means, but it's the biggest city. Okay, how about in the country? And they said maybe 20. And so when we were talking about Wise County in Texas, we were counting just 3 small towns of Wise County.
Yeah.
Smaller towns. We counted 21?
Yeah.
Just right off the bat.
Right.
That there are more churches in 3 small towns of Texas than there are in an entire nation, an entire country. That just, to me, that blows my mind.
And just, I'm going to say this for scale, but vaguely enough. You're talking 7-figure population.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking roughly the size of Virginia, the country.
Okay. And all of those churches are probably 40 people?
Yeah, not a lot, no. No, definitely not a lot. I wouldn't know the exact numbers.
But so you're talking about...
But we're not talking about 10 mega churches.
0.1%.
Oh, yeah. We're talking percentage of Christian?
Yes.
Yeah, less than 1%. Yeah.
So you're over there, boots on the ground,
mm-hmm.
knowing that. Do you get paranoid? Do you get wigged out? Do you...
Yeah. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I had read stuff. I had heard about things. But I didn't know what to expect. And to be honest, there was a little bit of fear. But not so much fear like I thought I would be kidnapped or something like that. The fear was just, I've never experienced. I don't know what to expect. I've never experienced being in a minority group that, like spiritually, a spiritual minority group that small, right? And that if I were to say certain things, it would make people react differently. Like if I said missionary, that had horrible connotations.
Really?
So I couldn't really. We would say M, like she's an M kid, or there's an M conference or whatever, because missionary was just not a word you wanted to use.
Can I ask what? Like, why not?
I think a lot of it is a lot of the missionaries that are there doing some really cool work with like NGOs and the people I was with therapy and doctors, doing a lot of like amazing things physically as a means to get to the deeper spiritual stuff. And so I think a lot of the local people really appreciate and love the physical things. Like you're bringing education, you're bringing medicine, you're bringing things that skills that we desperately want and care about, but don't start impeding on the spiritual side of things. And so I think the perception with the whole missionary thing.
Okay.
And so a lot of the foreign workers don't want to be kicked out of the country because their ulterior motives are being found out. You know what I mean? I think there's some perhaps some understanding. Yeah, you're okay. You're here. You're a doctor, and you're treating people, but you're also doing some spiritual stuff. Keep it to yourself, type of thing. So if you start throwing around missionary, like he's a missionary, she's a missionary, it becomes much more public, and then they would just get kicked out of the country.
So there's a fine line of playing the game.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's definitely, like, the government's aware of churches, and they'll come and inspect churches and make sure that they're, like, not doing anything radical or crazy to their standards. And so it's not okay to evangelize children. So the church I was at did a really cool job at investing in children. And what they would do is the government would come and they would hide all their stuff. And the kids would draw and just doodle and stuff. And the government would inspect, and then they'd leave, and then they'd continue their lesson. And what's cool is, like, the 9-year-old I was with, she knew that. She's like, yeah, we'd just draw and pretend.
It's crazy to think about so much of what we do would not be allowed.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. But what's cool is the light of God and the heart of the pastor. He said something to some of the folks I was with. He said, the whole congregation, you guys think that we're distracting your kids so that way I can preach to you. But really what's happening is I'm distracting you so we can preach to your children. And I was like, that is so, because they're so invested in the next generation of Christians coming up, being raised in the way, being raised in truth, being raised to follow Christ young.
Wow.
Because most of the people there are first generation Christians. And with not even like I kind of know the basics of Christianity and now I become a believer. It's like I have no idea. And all of a sudden I'm a believer. I believe this stuff, but I have no frame of reference.
Yeah, like we sometimes I struggle when I'm preaching to go to like have a reference like, like David and Goliath, because there's an assumption that everyone kind of gets that idea, which sometimes they do. Like if you're in big church with the adults, you can say something like that, and that 95% of the people are like, oh yeah, David and Goliath, I get the idea. Mm-hmm. Or I've heard that urban legend, if they say it's an urban legend or whatever, sure, right?
Yeah.
But to not have any context for any of that, even what the love of Christ is, it would be very difficult.
Yeah, not the basic concepts of Christianity, but like the foundational things, like the atonement, the Trinity, which, like, explaining the Trinity is difficult, but, the basic, like, the basic kind of tenets of Christianity become like novel ideas. And so you really have to get to like...
I'm trying to figure out how to word this where it doesn't sound contrite.
Okay.
You definitely felt like you were doing kingdom work.
Yeah.
So when I asked the question, did you get to do any more in-depth kingdom work? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, I think so.
Because let me give context to that question.
Okay. Uh-huh.
So here in America, and you do this physical therapy work, you've shared stories with me of how this, I was getting this guy to extend his knee, and while we were doing that, we were also talking about like the Bible.
First John.
Yeah. Galatians 4. Was Hebrews written by a woman? Those sort of things. But did that happen there at all? Were you allowed to do any of that at all?
So from what's really neat is there's an ability, I think, to speak truth into people, kind of like through my hands. So when I'm teaching and helping people, I think that the people there, they have the misconception that all Westerners and Americans are Christian. So I think they're already assuming like, hey, this guy has come all this way to help my kid. Like, why? Why would you come all the way to this small place to help my kid? And so I think that in the back of their head, they're already thinking like, this guy's probably a Christian.
Okay.
So something's different. So there's that. As far as explicit, like say evangelism, I wasn't able to do any of that, and that the reason for that is the folks I was with, they've laid such an amazing foundation and are held to such high esteem as foreigners that they're able to do it more explicitly, but they've earned that ability. They've earned the ability to, while treating people, they've earned the ability to say, hey, you know what, let me pray for you in the name of Jesus. And I think that, and they're playing what I call the long game. And so, like, I heard someone say in this part of the world, when you're planting seeds in rocky soil, and there's a lot of, it's not good soil. There's rocks, there's all this stuff in it, but you're planting seeds that maybe 20, 30, 40 years from now, you're going to see an amazing harvest.
Okay.
So they are what I would consider playing the long game, and have earned the ability to speak truth, to evangelize more explicitly, and I didn't want to, and I didn't feel it was my place to kind of impede on that. And not saying that I wouldn't, like I was afraid to. It was what's the most effective way to do it. And I think they were being effective with their ministry, and I was just kind of an arm of that.
Did that disappoint you, not being able to?
You know what?
Because I know that you went in thinking, like, I could lead somebody to Christ.
Yeah. It was the most... It was an interesting mission trip because I think you go on a mission trip and you're expecting to like convert a bunch of people, right? But I think a lot of the mission trips, short-term mission trips that we talk about, are in places where it's not, I don't want to say it's hard, but with security and the cultural anti-Christianity, it was difficult. So yes, it was a little disappointing because I'm like, I want to save somebody eternally. But I kept having to remind myself that I was impacting people's lives, and I was planting seeds that I probably will never see the harvest. And I think that's hard in ministry, to plant seeds in people's lives. I mean, as you know probably better than me, you plant 1,000,000 seeds, and you don't get to necessarily see the harvest, especially as a youth pastor. I mean,
I talk about that with Tara.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that because we were like, why do we do something we feel we're actually incredibly unsuccessful at?
Yeah, so when I was there, it was like I know that I assume that you assume I'm a Christian because that's just kind of the perception, and I'm here helping your kid, and I'm with somebody that I assume you also assume is a Christian, has had more influence spiritually, is able to have that influence and speak that truth. So just my presence there and what I was doing on the physical needs and loving on these kids, I think had impact, and I think planted seeds. I pray planted seeds that God's going to use. Because there were a lot of kids that, and the whole time I was there, I saw one dad with his kid to help bring his kid to a treatment. Now, granted, some of them are at work, some of them, but there's also a cultural norm of just mom takes care of it. Kid's a burden. It's mom's fault. Mom takes care of it. And so,
wow.
I saw one dad the entire time I was there.
Did you find anyone that was just like aggravated you were there, but they were there?
No, I don't think so.
That's good.
I think about it, which was a little. That was in the back of my head, like, "Hey guys, I'm whiter than all of you, and my red hair is."
I'm generically not from here. It's obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't blend in a lot of places, specifically there. Like, I don't blend in at all. Yeah, I'm like transparent. I'm so white. So, it was. Yeah, I didn't fit in for sure. But this part of the world, I think that there's a misconception that it's dangerous, and there is danger for sure. I don't want to like downplay the security and the safety and the danger, but I felt safer walking the streets of their capital than I would walking the streets of our capital. I felt less likely to get mugged or I felt just safe walking the streets there than I would in like Dallas downtown.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and it was because
I never would have thought you had said that.
I'm pretty country, and so cities in general, I'm like, oh my goodness, a building, and so, but being there,
that's bigger than the courthouse.
Yeah, that's tall. I felt more safe, and I talking with some of the people there.
Sorry, I just that's bigger than big dicks.
Oh my goodness, that's awesome.
Sorry.
The most Texas thing.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, the state fair.
Yeah. Sorry.
So I felt safer, and which was a weird experience to be like walking in a place where I anticipated being like, I'm gonna have to hide, like, because I stick out. And it wasn't like that at all. I felt comfortable.
So I experienced this, and a lot of us guys experience this when we go on my guys' trip. We'll get back, and it's like I'm aggravated with every little thing, and like I remember early on, before I was aware of this, like year 5 and 6 and even 7 of the trip, Allison would, we'd be in an argument with me being home in for 5 hours. A lot of times we think Satan's going to attack on the front end. Mm-hmm. Then we get that he's going to attack while we're there. Mm-hmm. But here's what I think. I think he attacks when we get back from things like that. Mm. Because if he can make it come across as it wasn't helpful, there's no reason to go back.
That's a good point, yeah.
Right? So if he attacks your marriage and your family and you as a parent, then it's like, why would I support you going back to that?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Am I explaining that really well?
That's fantastic. That's good.
Yeah, because that would happen on these guys trips. Guys would get back and be like, you know,
I can't go back.
yeah, you're just you're a grump. You don't have any patience. You're tired. You're more tired because we shenanigans the whole time and stayed up too late or whatever. Yeah. But you're more tired, and there's a marital fight and this, and it's like I remember guys having conversations of like, I didn't come back any better. Where this is going on, heck is breaking loose or whatever, and it's like, yeah, it's to leave the impression that God didn't do anything.
Yeah. That
actually things got worse. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have the support to go back. Yeah. Did your family? So here's my next question. So did your family get attacked while you were gone?
So we live on a little farm. I call it a farmette, starter farm.
Farmette.
And so I'm the one that deals with all the animals. Like we have chickens, we have goats, we have cat, we have dogs, we have a turtle.
Cat's not an animal.
It's not anymore, which leads to the next thing.
Uh-oh.
So normally I'm the one that takes care of all the animals. And I was only gone, 10, 11 days is like an eternity for a mother of 4.
Yes.
And the weather changed. It became pouring down, freezing. So our goat keeps getting out. So I chained it up, kind of outside, has plenty of grass. It had plenty of room to roam, had water, all that stuff.
It's like a 100-yard chain.
Yeah. He's fine. But one of the days, Amber went to stay with her mom, came back, had a note on our mailbox from the sheriff that some neighbor had called and animal control and said we were performing animal cruelty on our goat. First of all, it's a goat. He was getting prepared for Old Testament type sacrifice, so he's lucky to be alive. So she had to, in the rain, drag him into our barn. Which he's a pretty big goat. He's kind of a turd. So she had to deal with that. And then one of the chickens was, our dog likes to not kill the chicken, but pluck the chicken. So we'll pin it down and just kind of pluck all the feathers off its back. So Amber went out one day to feed the chickens, and one of them's just bald. Whole back got like a buzz cut.
She's doing part of the work for you.
Yeah. So all of those are just like annoyances, but none of those things happen when I'm home.
Yeah.
And she's just having to deal with all of that. And I'm in the other part of the world. Like, I don't know how to help you with this. So
that's not funny. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Amber.
It's funny now. We can laugh. But yeah, so those are just 3 off the top of my head, like things that she had to deal with that were for sure Satan trying to throw her off of just her game.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what was really cool was right when she dropped me off, Amber said, she's like, I almost broke down. Like it was like, he's gone. I'm scared. This is going to be hard. And she prayed, God, if you've called him to this, obviously, you need to give me the strength, the patience to do this. And she's like, we had one of our best weeks. Despite all those like insane attacks, she's like, I was more patient. I had fun. I was energized. I felt good for 9 of those. Now near the end, it was like, okay,
yeah,
it's time to come home, babe. But she's like, I had one of the best weeks. And spiritually, she just felt like filled up. And it's so cool how God supplied what she needed.
Yeah.
It was really neat.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So earlier we said, what's next?
Yeah, what's next?
So what's next?
Yeah, so I want to lead teams back. I think that's the next thing. I don't want to say for sure, Lord willing, I'm going to go back next year or within a year and a half, 2 years, depending on work and time and all that. So that's my plan, is to go back, to continue to do some therapy. But I think part of my role in this is educating the people here. Because when we talk theoretically about the unreached people, I found them. Like I was there. I was in a village where there's zero churches.
Right.
Within probably 300 miles. And so the idea of that, and then also the like fear that people have in America with that part of the world and within the church. I think part of my role too is educating on like, these people need Jesus. They all need Jesus. And if we're going to fulfill the Great Commission and go to all the nations, we need to go to the hard, the persecuted, the unreached people. And so that's where my heart is. And so I want to kind of pour that out a little bit and potentially bring teams back to share that and to experience some of the things that I experienced. So that way, I don't know if I'm supposed to be a long-term worker there, but perhaps my role is to raise up some high school kid or some adult that is like, you know what? Thank you for bringing me here because this is what God has called me to do.
Gotcha.
So I think that's what's next. We'll see. I'm in the baby phases of planning out. It's only been like 3 weeks since I've been back, but I'm starting to plan out what's next.
What's next?
Yeah.
That's awesome. But now our conversations can get back to like how bad of dads we are and husbands we are and stuff like that. So that'll be good.
Yeah.
So anyways, thank you guys for listening. And if you have questions for Nathanael, it may be easier for some of those questions to get answered through email.
Yes.
So if you email me, codykleckler@gmail.com, I will forward those to him. And we'll try to answer some of those. And if some of those can get answered on the podcast, we'll do that. Maybe do a Q&A if we have enough of those.
Yeah.
But we just tried to stay somewhat generic, just that way everybody's on the safety issue and everything like that. So get those to me. Again, thanks for listening to the Clack Box, and hope you enjoyed. Have a great day. Peace.